Media experts say EU Parliament resolution amounts to infringement of territorial integrity. MOFA spokesperson says UN fails to address fair humanitarian assistance. This is Addis News Hour, and many thanks for joining us with the news. I'm Shafarao Lakau. Do stay with us. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, along with high-level officials, visited an irrigation-based wheat farm in RC zone in the state of Oromia. Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Dammaqe Mokonnin, the former Prime Minister Hailemariam Desalegn, and other officials have accompanied the Premier in the visiting session. Ethiopia has prioritized irrigation-based wheat production as part of the efforts of food security and import substitution. Now, the spokesperson of the Foreign Affairs Ministry, Dina Mufti, says the UN has failed to address fair humanitarian assistance for the IDPs in the northern part of Ethiopia. Dina underlined that no entity, including the UN, has the right to violate the sovereignty and territorial integrity of any nation. Goshumalsa reports.
Ethiopia has faced unprecedented pressure from the US administration and some other international communities since the commencement of law enforcement operation in Tigray last year. And the UN met 10 times to discuss about Ethiopia in an unusual way, though ended in deadlock. Various media outlets are also reporting unsubstantiated information against Ethiopia. In an exclusive interview with ETV, spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Dina Mufti, articulated that the UN has failed to address fair humanitarian assistance for IDPs in northern Ethiopia.
There are two imbalances. The displacements, internal displacements, has taken place massively in both Amhara and Afar region. It's not only confined to the Tigray region. Helping the Tigray, assisting the Tigray region is not a problem. But ignoring what is happening in Afar region, the Amhara region, is a big failure on the part of the humanitarian operations. And that is what has to be rectified. That is what has to be re-evaluated and reassessed, and correction measures has to be taken. And a relief supply has to be given to wherever people are displaced. And this is what the Ethiopian government has been doing. This is what the Ethiopian government has been saying all along. But there are some who ignore what has happened in Amhara and Afar region, as if nothing has happened.
Dina underlined that no entity, including the UN, has the right to violate sovereignty and integrity of any nation.
We are the member of the United Nations. Ethiopia is a full-fledged member of the United Nations. It's not only a member of the United Nations, it is also the founding member of the United Nations. Ethiopia is always abided by law, rules and regulations of the United Nations. It's a law-abiding nation, and no one is allowed to violate the UN laws and regulations, particularly that deal with sovereignty and territorial integrity of a given nation. If the UN, if elements of the UN tend to violate these rules and regulations, this is a sign of the failure on the part of the United Nations, and it should be corrected. Ethiopia is also responsible for this. All proud member nations of the United Nations are responsible for this. It should not be left to reckless and irresponsible people who are hell-bent on violating these norms.
Regarding the expulsion of UN officials, experts pronounced the legal ground that Ethiopia is not subjected to provide evidence as member nation of UN and sovereign country.
The persona non grata is actually internationally recognized. Even in doing so, the country who expels the people or individuals, it thinks that they are working something contradicting with their custom, culture, political system, that leading to the collapse of systems. It can expel. For that, it is not subjected even, the country is not subjected even for expression in international law.
The maintenance of the law and the order is actually a priority for a sovereign government like Ethiopia. And the government has a right, full-fledged right, of maintaining law and order as it wishes. And anyone who contravenes with the law and order of the nations is not allowed. And giving it in persona non grata, like what has happened, what was mentioned, is in order. And it is always what a proud government like Ethiopian government does.
Reacting on CNN's latest remark about Ethiopia's airlines, Dina said Westerns are using the other mechanism to put pressure on Ethiopia and shows their defeat.
This is a game that has been defeated. This is an exercise that can be defeated from day one. You cannot establish unique yardstick for only Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a sovereign country. This carrier is a sovereign carrier. And you cannot deny Ethiopia what other sovereign or independent nations do. And this is something that has been defeated. This is something that has been already, it was non-started to accuse the Ethiopian Airlines of doing this. This is a proud airline. This is an airline that have been famous for what it is doing, for its service to Africa and the rest of the world. And one should not do that. And in fact, this is a game that has failed earlier on.
It is to be recalled that the UN recalled the IOM Chief Country Director to Ethiopia, Morina Ching, due to her remark undermining a response of UN.
Now, the EU Parliament resolution on Ethiopia is tantamount to infringement of territorial integrity and sovereignty of the East African nation. This remark was made by Garrison, who is an independent journalist based in the San Francisco Bay Area. She's also called on Ethiopians to urge some U.S. government officials to stop their patronizing posture on Ethiopia. The report is presented as follows. Independent journalist based in the San Francisco Bay Area, Garrison is an editor and contributor for several newspapers who won a Peace Prize for her reporting on conflicts in the African Great Lakes region. She says the EU Parliament's recent resolution on Ethiopia is tantamount to infringement of territorial integrity and sovereignty of the East African nation.
I don't think it will happen under UN command because Russia and China consistently resist the efforts to sanction and intervene in Ethiopia. Unilateral sanctions are illegal, so is unilateral military intervention. But as we know, the United States doesn't have a lot of respect for international law, much to my chagrin. But I don't think there's any danger of a UN peacekeeping mission being imposed on you because Russia and China won't go along with it. And yes, it would be a big violation of your sovereignty.
Communications Director for the Ethiopian American Civic Council, Askwal Tafari, shares her ideas.
I think I agree with Anne. I mean, for that to happen, they definitely have to have the agreement from Russia and China. And they keep saying negotiate, but we don't negotiate with terrorists. This is the mantra of the United States themselves. We don't negotiate with terrorists. So it will be an absolute hypocrisy, and that's not going to happen. In terms of UN keeping forces in the region, Ethiopia is a sovereign state. They would have to actually approve unilaterally that they would accept the UN peacekeeping force, and that's not going to happen because it's a functioning government.
Anne Garrison has also taken the occasion to share her views about Jeffrey Feltman and Samantha Power's urgent high-level ministerial meeting on Ethiopia.
These European saviors, these governments posturing as European saviors of a Black African nation. Today, Samantha Power, I think I told you at the beginning, she called a high ministerial meeting of white saviors from all the European countries and the United States and Japan, which is more or less part of that bloc. I mean, I really think he should just speak out as to how ridiculous and patronizing and presumptuous this is.
They also voiced their disappointment over CNN, which is being a propaganda machine used by the U.S. for regime change in Africa.
I used to think CNN was the most reliable news agency. But if you look at the trend and what's going on in American journalism, they're almost like a propaganda machine. There's a book called Hate Incorporated, Hate Inc. written by Matt Taibbi. You should really look into that book. He presents a compelling argument that during Iraq, for example, when they wanted to topple Saddam Hussein, as Anne just described, Tony Blair at that time in UK wanted to do so, but couldn't. He couldn't persuade the public to support a regime change. Then came 9/11. And right after 9/11, the United States started propaganda. Basically, they build a consensus. They go out and build a consensus. There is a weapon of mass destruction in Iraq. But what they really wanted was a regime change at that time. And so the US foreign policy makers came up with a doctrine that the US should secure what's called a preponderance of influence over all countries, meaning having a plan to change a regime of any country not under the direct control of the United States, from Cuba all the way to China.
They've also called on Ethiopians at home and abroad to show their stronger solidarity more than ever before at such a critical time in the midst of foreign meddling and internal pressures.
Gondar, a city of palaces and castles.
Now in the palace of Emperor Fasilides. Let's go inside and see what it's like. It has a unique Nubian structure and it was registered on the UNESCO Heritage Sites in 1979. Gondar, Gondar. This statue was made to commemorate the beloved Emperor Theodros on January 18th of 2012.
We're here to see some castles. World Heritage Site.
Welcome back. You're still watching Addis News Hour. Ethiopians say UN recalling of two of its senior officials from Ethiopia is a clear depiction of the institution's bias toward TPLF. The UN is currently receiving a wave of criticisms on social media for sacking two of its well-experienced black women from their position under the pretext of administrative leave. The UN's blatant violation of Ethiopia's sovereign rights has, however, drawn angry reactions from all Ethiopians. Sintayot Amrat has more.
Ethiopians have been angrily reacting on social media as the United Nations Migration Agency put head of Ethiopia office Maureen Echeng on administrative leave on grounds of unauthorized interviews in which she remarked about the TPLF terrorist group, a group that seems to get some form of support by the UN agencies, as indicated in a recent leaked information. In the leaked video clip last week, she had an interview with Jeff Pierce, author and historian. He claims that the audio was stolen.
Why the hell the UN is doing that? Did you find an answer to that question?
Yes, because it serves their interest to cooperate with a terrorist organization. It's easier to cooperate with them. We know that there are sympathizers working within these UN agencies. This comes in the wake of the debacle over this so-called leaked audio, which is not a leaked audio. It was stolen from me. It was stolen from my digital recorder at the airport. This is my first public appearance since that whole scandal.
The audio was first shared on Twitter by Mesai Kebede, Ethiopian satellite television journalist based in the US, but was later removed as Pierce claimed that the audio was stolen. She talked about how the UN Ethiopia staff on the ground was sidelined after the UN deployed colleagues from elsewhere. The leaked information said that the UN officials were deployed with a preconceived view about the conflict in Tigray. Ethiopians and friends of Ethiopians took the matter to social media to condemn the United Nations. They appreciate Echeng's courage to reveal the bond between the global agency, the United Nations, and the local terrorist, the Tigray People's Liberation Front. Lemlemitu Ethiopia, for example, tweeted, "I'm deeply saddened to learn that the departure of Maureen Echeng, Ethiopia chief of UN's Migration Agency, her only crime was telling the truth about TPLF terrorist group. For that, she is paying a heavy price." Similarly, Dr. Midlander from the Netherlands wrote, United Nations recalls Ethiopia migration head Maureen Echeng because she exposed the mess UN Ethiopia and the role of the WHO chief Tedros Adhanom and others in destabilizing Ethiopia. She asks Antonio Guterres to clean his house. Another user from Spain wrote, the UN has kicked her out from her job for fighting irregularities and falsification of reports in Ethiopia. This tweet also demands Antonio Guterres to justify why two black women are fired from a senior position from a country with dire humanitarian situation. This and other social media posts are making it clear that the UN's mission is humanitarian, but that supporting terrorist groups like TPLF is something else. They question whether what the UN says as gravely concerned about humanitarian situation in Ethiopia is a real concern, because the global body is now firing the officials dedicated for the goals of humanitarian and abiding by the universal principles of humanity. Why is the UN going to the extent of firing two of the strongest of its women staff for insisting on global principles of humanitarianism and unveiling the hidden agenda of the United Nations officials to dismantle Ethiopia and the Horn region, the users argue? There are also those who seem to see the UN's decision as a racist one. Sultana Bagisa, apparently a social media activist, says, while free world leader is celebrating Girls' Day, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres fired black women from IOM Ethiopia director position just for being unbiased on Ethiopia issue. Some Ethiopian diaspora organizations have criticized the United Nations leadership over its decision of firing Maureen as head of IOM Ethiopia. The Ethiopian American Civic Council said Echeng, IOM Chief of Mission to Ethiopia and representative to the African Union and United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, has been removed from her post by UN officials in New York for exposing the TPLF's crimes. They also criticized the United Nations for morphing back into becoming the League of Nations. The association is asked for credible investigation into the matter. Ethiopians have launched a petition on change.org calling for the United Nations to reinstate Maureen Acheng as IOM Chief of Mission to Ethiopia. Within hours after it was created, hundreds of Ethiopians have signed the petition.
Ethiopian diaspora communities in the USA have raised a huge amount of money in just a few days to show their solidarity with the federal government of Ethiopia. The income generation activities are being done in different US states to reaffirm their commitment to supporting their home country. Haptamo Shagri has more.
Ethiopian nationals living in the US said they are ready to continue their support the federal government and the country at large.
All Ethiopians who are residing in Washington, D.C., we have to see how some Western countries meddling Ethiopia in various domestic matters. The only option that we have is supporting Ethiopia and Ethiopians. Thus, we are the only alternative for Ethiopians. No one can stand and help us at this critical time.
We have to stand together with the Ethiopia's government to protect the pressure of some foreign countries. These external forces want to divert the national interest of our country. We also have to finance the federal government.
Speaking on the occasion, Ethiopia's permanent representatives to the UN, Tayyat Qassilase, for his part said Ethiopian diasporas have the potential to judge the recent political conspiracies better than some foreign countries.
ኢትዮጵያ አሁን ያለችበት መንገድ መስቀለኛ ነው ሊባል ይቻላል የመንገዳችን ማማር ወይም
We can say Ethiopia is under cross lines. We are the only decision maker to our future and destiny. There is no other force on the earth to decide our future. The alpha and omega of our future is under Ethiopians. Despite foreign pressure, we have to manage it with great wisdom. If we combine knowledge with wisdom, we can remove confusion and hand over clear vision to the generation to come. Thus, you have to exercise all your efforts and wisdom by removing emotions to achieve your objective.
Ethiopian ambassador to US Fitsum Araga for his part called upon Ethiopian diasporas to maximize their support.
ለተጎዱ ወገኖቻችን መርጃ በሚል እንደዚሁ ዛሬ የምናደርገው አይነት መድረክ ላይ በመሰባሰብ
Ethiopian diasporas are organizing various fundraising activities in US to support displaced individuals in Ethiopia. Ethiopian diasporas in various states have supported these activities over the past 1 month. Various institutions are also undertaking fundraising activities to support the needy segments in Ethiopia.
In another development, Ethiopian diaspora communities have contributed 122 million birr to the GERD in just 2 months. The contribution is ever increasing according to the Public Coordination Office of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. The diaspora communities have expressed further commitment to helping finalize the dam construction and taking Ethiopia to the highest level of economic growth. The Ethiopian diaspora established a council in 2020 to facilitate their contributions in national image building, education, and other development activities back in their nation of origin.
The fortress was built in the 15th century by the Mamluk Sultan Kate Bey on the site of the Pharos Lighthouse. The Abu al-Abbas al-Mersi Mosque is the most important in the city. Built in 1775 over the tomb of an Andalusian saint, its walls and domes are covered in beautiful carvings.
And finally, Somalia has appealed to collaboration with Kenya after court's ruling. Somalia's president said in a speech that the ICJ's ruling on the border dispute with Kenya is an opportunity for the two countries to collaborate. President Farmajo spoke after the ICJ ruled in favor of Somalia, handing it control over a potentially rich area of the Indian Ocean. Before the announcement of the court's decision, Kenya accused the court of being biased and refused to acknowledge its authority. And now a quick reminder of the top stories. Media experts say EU Parliament resolution amounts to infringement of territorial integrity. And MOFA spokesperson says UN fails to address fair humanitarian assistance. And with that, we come to the end of today's stories. Many thanks for watching us.